Hey everybody, welcome into To The Point. We're all doing well on this Tuesday. We are here today with the NFC East Preview. Got 3 of these left to go. They've been super fun, and the NFC East is loaded. It's going to be a I think it might be the best division in football, quite frankly, this season. AFC West, which we'll talk about soon, also pretty damn good. But NFC East, we got the Commanders, we got the Giants. How about them Cowboys? And the team who got to the Super Bowl last year in a losing effort, the Philadelphia Eagles. So lots to dive into today, but let's start in Washington, the nation's capital in the United States. Washington didn't change their head coach, didn't change their defensive coordinator. They do have a new OC in Eric Bieniemy, but we'll save that. The biggest news of their offseason was that Daniel Snyder, the worst owner in pro sports, is gone. Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, and a plethora of others have now bought into the team. It's rejuvenation. It's a new day in DC. The fan base still has a bad stadium and a bad location, which hurts their attendance. And football really hasn't been a big deal in Washington in a long period of time. But I think there's hope. There's good feeling. It's just maybe we can turn the corner. Maybe something good can happen with this football team because Daniel Snyder is finally gone. And Ron Rivera comes in with new owners, and I think he's got a lot to prove. He's been there for a couple of years. Ron Rivera's loved around the league. Obviously, he had cancer a number of years ago. He battled through that, going through treatments and coming out the other side bigger and better. But it's the game of football. When you don't make the playoffs and you're in a division where the other 3 teams make the playoffs and you don't look all that good. Giants, Cowboys, Eagles all made the postseason last year. Washington was nowhere close. Started the season with Carson Wentz, was a complete and total disaster. He remains unsigned. So they said, let's go in a new direction. They let Taylor Heineke leave to the Atlanta Falcons. And they signed Jacoby Brissett, who played really good football with the Cleveland Browns last year. And they had Sam Howell, who sat every game but one last year, a 5th-round pick out of the University of North Carolina. A big talent in college, his second to last year in college, one of the best quarterbacks. Lost all of his weapons in his last year, wasn't all that impressive. Teams thought he might have a first-round grade. He dropped all the way to the 5th round because of his senior season at North Carolina. So now, what are the Commanders going to do? Are they going to go with the veteran who played really well in Cleveland last year, Jacoby Brissett, or go with Sam Howell? They announced a few weeks ago it is Sam Howell's team. And there's been more reports since that they wish they played him earlier last year. They think he's a big talent. He has some traits that you would like. He's got a big arm. He can move. He's a big, strong guy. He might be a more athletic Big Ben Roethlisberger if everything can come together. So Sam Howell is the guy. He will be given the reins and see what he can do with it. But getting Sam Howell, that's not enough. You need to make a splash. You need an offensive coordinator that can help this team really get to that next level. And Washington brought over Eric Bieniemy, former OC in Kansas City, multiple-time Super Bowl champion, a guy who's been up for head coaching jobs for many, many years and hasn't been able to get him for some reason. He's now the offensive coordinator in Washington. He'll be calling the plays. There will be no Andy Reid over his shoulder or, he's not really that smart of a coach because he's working with Patrick Mahomes. He's now working with a quarterback with 1 game of NFL experience. He's working with a team that is trying to get back to the promised land, trying to get back to relevancy in Washington. So a true opportunity for Bieniemy to really showcase to teams that he could be a head coach elsewhere in the NFL working with Sam Howell. Washington also brought in Andrew Wiley, formerly of the Chiefs, a pretty solid offensive lineman. They lose Taylor Heineke, longtime corner Kyle Fuller, Cole Holcomb, but all in all, they keep their team the same. They did get Emmanuel Forbes, that was their first-round pick, a corner out of Mississippi State. He led the nation in touchdowns last year by a corner. He also led them in interceptions. So he is a ball hawk. You look at him, he's got a very, very small frame. He's tall and very thin, kind of Kevin Durant-like. Not as tall as him, but he has that body type. And we'll see what he can do at the NFL level. In college, he was very, very good, very dynamic on that defense. They also added Chris Rodriguez Jr., who is a running back I liked at Kentucky. He's now in Washington. So that was their draft class. I look at this team as a whole in Washington. I go, I like it. It's better than it used to be. I thought their team was decent last year with the Green Lizard, Taylor Heineke, who I have a soft spot for. I like him. I think they're a very talented group without elite talent. That's what I would say. But I think it's okay to have a team full of really good players, of some good players. I'd rather have a team full of good players than a few elite ones and, crap around the edges. Terry McLaurin at wide receiver, to me, is in that 10 to 15 range. He's great. He runs simple routes. He makes every big catch. He's Mr. Third Down. And it doesn't matter what quarterback was playing, if it was Carson Wentz, if it was Taylor Heineke, he was there on third down to make a big catch to move the sticks. And to me, he's the leader of the team. He's the guy that just embodies it, was playing at Ohio State, had to grind his way to the NFL, was not a guy that was given anything. He had to earn it all. And he's fantastic. He really is. So I love Terry McLaurin. They drafted Jahan Dotson last season out of Penn State. He's got more to showcase. He's got more to provide for this team, in my mind. Again, no stable quarterback last year. That hurts. You want to have somebody that you trust week to week. He only had 35 receptions last year, 523 yards. He did have 7 touchdowns. That should go up. He only played 12 games as well, so he was injured. But I think he's a better player than what he showcased. They have Curtis Samuel, who's a bit of a gadget guy. They drafted De'Ami Brown from North Carolina, so he has a connection with Sam Howell already. And there's also Byron Pringle, who played at Kansas City, so another guy that Eric Bieniemy is familiar with. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, a very good 1-2 punch at running back. Robinson coming from Alabama. I mentioned Chris Rodriguez Jr. So they have depth there. To me, offensively, for this team to be really, really good, they need to protect Sam Howell, and he needs to understand, defenses, because I think this team can throw the ball down the field. I think they can produce big plays. But can you limit mistakes, and can you be great in certain situations? Because in this division, every team is good. And you could argue the 3 teams that made the playoffs last year are better than they were last year, which I'm going to make that argument in just a minute. Even the Giants, and I didn't like the Daniel Jones contract, are better than they were last year, and they won a playoff game. They went to Minnesota, and they won a playoff game there. But can Sam Howell understand defenses? Can he make the right read? Those are the important things to understand. Can they run the football? I like Brian Robinson. He got shot in the leg twice to begin the year last year, so we had an awful start. And yes, if you don't recall that story, he was shot twice. But Gibson's very good at catching balls out of the backfield. Brian Robinson's kind of a jack of all trades. Sam Howell can use his athleticism. But the biggest strength for Washington, and maybe this offense will take some time to come together. I think the offense is decent, as I just said. The front for the Washington Commanders is elite. When you talk about Chase Young, De'Aaron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Montez Sweat. Those four guys are killers. They are a group that attack quarterbacks. They get through offensive lines, and when you're playing Washington, it's not a fun day because you know you're going to have to deal with these monsters. The big question mark is Chase Young. Second overall pick, was great in his rookie season. The next 2 years, not so great. Second season, numbers go down. Third season, he doesn't play any games. Played 3 games last year. Didn't register a sack. Had 7.5 in 2020, but also had 32 solo tackles. He's in his contract year. They need to decide if, they've already declined his 5th-year option. So he'll be eligible to be a free agent after this season, have a great year, maybe get a big contract somewhere else. But he was so great in college. I still think he can play, but it's about finding that consistency. De'Aaron Payne has been great for this team. 11.5 sacks last year. 64 total tackles. Played in all, and this is what's great about him. 2018, 16 games. 2019, 15. 2020, 16. 2021 and 2022, 17 games. He plays in every game. He's available. Same as Montez Sweat and the same as Jonathan Allen. If this group up front can play 17 games together, they can wreak havoc. Chase Young already has a problem with his neck. It's unknown if he'll be available week 1. But it's the biggest strength of this team, bar none. Because of the depth they have, because of how strong they are, and just this group has played together a long time. They know each other's moves. They know how to get to the quarterback. And that's what they do best. So if you're sacking the opposing quarterback, you're getting pressures and you're getting the offense off the field quick, creating some turnovers potentially, it helps your offense. It limits the pressure on inexperienced Sam Howell. Weaknesses. I can't say Sam Howell's a strength yet because he hasn't played all that much. I watched him in the preseason. He had some good moments. He played a Monday Night Football game where I thought he played really well. I thought he played really well. I liked what I saw. I liked him in college. He was good at North Carolina. He's got the presence. He's got the athleticism to be good in the NFL. Maybe not an elite guy. Maybe not top 10. But can he be in that mix? Can he be Dak Prescott? Can he be Daniel Jones? I think he can. I think he's a better thrower of the football than Daniel Jones. I don't think he'll have to use his legs as much as Daniel Jones either. And he's got a big arm. He can throw the ball down the field if you want to stretch out the opposing team's defense. He absolutely can. Just limit mistakes. Understand when to check it down. That's for these younger quarterbacks. That's sometimes just the biggest thing. Can you just accept that, okay, we got to gain 4 here? He had 9 interceptions last year in college. His last year in college. Not great. But in 2019 in college, he had 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he has the skill to play at a very high level. But I can't say it's a strength yet for this team. Another weakness, I think the offensive line. That's the biggest thing for me. Andrew Wiley was a good signing, bringing him in. Nick Gates, another good signing. Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle, question mark. Didn't work out in Chicago for him. And yes, Chicago doesn't always breed the best talent, but at the same time, you weren't playing great in Chicago, and then you scoop them up in Washington. I have questions there. Defensively, Emmanuel Forbes is going to be starting, what we just talked about, with Kendall Fuller. I think it's a decent group back there. Cole Holcomb is gone. I think they're going to miss him. They brought in Cody Barton from Seattle to replace him at middle linebacker. But I don't think this defense is as good as they were in past years. I like their front. I like the Forbes pick. Kendall Fuller is a little up there in age. Can he continue to play at that level? And I also think for this team, is Jacoby Brissett the better quarterback to be starting right now? I like what I saw from Sam Howell. He didn't throw an interception in the preseason. I think he threw for 265 and 3 touchdowns in his appearances. So he was solid. But in saying that, Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland last year played really good football. He kept them afloat, and they were in line to be a playoff team until Deshaun Watson returned, and he screwed it up because he couldn't play. He was horrible down the stretch, and if Jacoby Brissett plays the remaining games, maybe they get in. I think it's a good option for Washington to have. I think he's a perfect backup quarterback because he knows how to do it. Started with Brady in New England, then he moved on to the Colts, and he got opportunities there. Didn't complain when Deshaun Watson returned last year. So I think he'll be a very good teammate with Sam Howell, a young quarterback. And I understand Ron Rivera probably looking around going, there's a new ownership here. I have been here a minute. I haven't really had a whole lot of success with this team. And this owner is not just going to keep me employed because I'm a cancer survivor and because I'm a good guy. The pairing of Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio, defensive coordinator, have been there a minute together. And they need to have some success. They need this year to be productive, or they will be looking for new employment in 2024. Because new owners like to hire their own people. And in 2024, 2023, 2024, if the Commanders miss the playoffs again, which I think they will, not because their team isn't that good, but because the rest of the division is too good, the team's going to rebrand. They're going to come up with a new name because the Commanders is awful. I hope they go back to Washington Football Team. I doubt they will, but that should be what they go to. It's a great name. You remember Washington Football Team. You don't think about the rest. You stand above the rest. It's better. They won't because it's too simple. But they're going to rebrand. They'll hire a new coach. They want to build a new stadium. There'll be a lot happening because yes, there's a new owner and there's new feeling, but if people aren't going to watch football games and your stadium sucks and your team isn't all that good, and you know who you blame? The head coach. Because he wasn't your hire, and you're a new owner, you can say, hey, we're hiring our head coach. We're bringing in our boy genius. Ron Rivera is kind of an old school, defensive-minded, old man head coach. Look around the league, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, these new guys, Mike McDaniel in Miami. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. We need to find our offensive coordinator who's under the age of 35, who's going to turn us around. Oddly enough, Dan Snyder could have had Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan because he worked both guys worked for him, but of course he was too stupid to see that they were good at their job, so he let them leave because Jay Gruden was having so much success with the then Redskins. But this football team is good. The biggest thing for them is the rest of the division is better. And I think it's going to be tough for this division to have 3 playoff teams again. But in saying that, I think the next 3 teams are all really good. Let's go to New York. Well, the team is the New York Giants, but they play in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So again, the New Jersey Giants, maybe. New Jersey Jets. You're not New York, you play in New Jersey. But we won't quibble too much with that today. The New York Giants, a surprising team last year. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, new head coach and general manager. First year, they make the postseason. They win a playoff game. Daniel Jones, his best year ever. And they look around and go, you know what? Saquon Barkley is going to be a free agent. Daniel Jones can be a free agent. Let's give Daniel Jones all the money. He's our franchise quarterback. We're paying him over $40 million a year. And let's put Saquon, the better of the 2 players, on the franchise tag and piss him off. So that's what the Giants decided to do. Eventually, Barkley and the Giants came to a deal for 1 year. But Daniel Jones is now a $40 million quarterback. And whether you like it or not, when you get a big contract, when you're placed on that pedestal, there is new pressure thrown on your lap. It was great last year for Danny Dimes. Didn't have to throw all that much on the run, bootlegs, open receivers, Brian Daboll, a great first-year coach, and everything went well in New York. But now you look around and go, well, we're paying this guy $40 million. Shouldn't he be able to run a damn offense by himself without gimmicking it for him? I hope they don't think that way, because Daniel Jones, we saw what he was when he's just asked to do too much. He's not that great of a quarterback. He's certainly not worth $40 million. But the Giants do the Giants things. John Mara, egomaniac. He wants to be Jerry Jones. He's not Jerry Jones. Even though why the hell would you want to be Jerry Jones? He hasn't won a championship since 1995. I was born in 98. I'm going to be 25 next week, and they haven't won since then. Sorry, Brent, but you know it's true. But the New York Giants, despite their idiot owner, and despite that they gave a bad contract to Daniel Jones, which will always be a mistake to me, whether they have success this year or not, actually have a good team. The thing was, the New York Giants didn't have a good team last year. And you might think, well, they won a playoff game, but they didn't. They didn't have one good receiver on their team. They had a great running back. He was healthy. That was, you could say, the most important element of that team was that, holy shit, our guy is healthy. Saquon Barkley can run. He can play 17 games, which he did play 17 games. That was the most important thing. But you look, Kenny Golladay, a bad contract prior to the Joe Shane regime, cut. Jalen Smith played middle linebacker. He's not coming back. Nick Vannett, a tight end, cut. Fabian Moreau, gone. Richie James, gone. John Feliciano left in free agency. Nick Gates, we just talked about, he's now on the Washington football team. He's now the center for Washington, was the former center for the Giants. So you lose all those players. No big losses. I think Feliciano and Gates on the offensive line are the 2 biggest names, but the skill position players, no, nothing bad there. What did the Giants do? They traded for Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. Remember Darren Waller, All-Pro, one of the best tight ends in football, was injured last year with Las Vegas. They were fed up. He was fed up with Vegas. I don't think he really wanted to stick around anymore. They're moving in a new direction when it comes to their offense. We'll talk about them soon. And the Giants say, you know what? We got a good tight end in Daniel Bellinger, but what if we have two good tight ends with Darren Waller? I like it. So Darren Waller, despite the fact that he was injured, he's one of the best stories in the NFL, in my opinion. He was, at one point, an alcoholic. He battled through it, and he's been sober for many, many years. But the thing you look at, 2020, he played 16 games, 1,200 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. 2021 only played 11 games, and he played 9 last year. Numbers are going down. Games played are going down. He's only 30. I don't mind the gamble. They didn't have to trade a lot for him, and the upside is huge if he can stay healthy. Sterling Shepard, they gave him a new contract. He's going to be healthy. That's a big deal. Good receiver. They brought in Paris Campbell from the Colts. We'll see what he can do. Isaiah Hodgkins might be the biggest thing for this team. He played in the playoff game against the Vikings, and he was the go-to guy. You didn't hear his name all year. Like, who the hell is this guy? Isaiah Hodgkins. But he went out there and he balled. He only got to the team later in the season, had over 100 yards in that game, and caught a touchdown, made some big plays. I look at him as their wide receiver 1 going into the season. They also added Raheem Roche on the back end, Bobby McCain to their secondary. They had signed Jamison Crowder as a kind of a speedy wide receiver, but he was cut this morning, so he won't be sticking around in New York. And they also drafted Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. He's kind of a speeder, kind of a speedy burner type receiver. I think he'll be used on deep plays. I think they should play him in the slot. I think he could get some passes in this offense. So in saying all that, same quarterback, same running back, they're signed, you bring them back. They also got Bobby Okereke from the Colts. Strengths for the Giants. Their pass rush is where you start. The defense. A'Shawn Robinson, Dexter Lawrence, who got a new deal this offseason. Leonard Williams. Kayvon Thibodeau, who's entering his second season, who I think will be better than he was in year 1. He was pretty good in year 1. Deonte Banks, who they took in the draft. Xavier McKinney, pretty good player. Ojulari. Okereke. This defense is loaded with talent. Loaded with talent. Kayvon Thibodeau only had 4 sacks in 2022. But they don't have the depth that they have now. A'Shawn Robinson, Raheem Nunez-Roches, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence. This team is going to rush the passer. They stop the run incredibly well. I just think as a whole, it's a really good defense. Jalen Smith for Bobby Okereke. Great trade-off. Bobby was one of the few good players in Indianapolis last year during the whole Jeff Saturday debacle. He was one of their core leaders. They didn't want to lose him, but they couldn't afford him, and the Giants were willing to pay him. They signed Dexter Lawrence to the second biggest contract for a D-tackle in NFL history behind only Aaron Donald. He's worth that money. He got 7.5 sacks. That's not his biggest thing, but he will stuff the run. He gets into the middle of that line, and he just breaks everything up. He's a strong, strong man. But looking at this division, I like all the defenses. And the offenses are good too, but this defense for the Giants, I think, will keep them in games. Can they create enough turnovers? That's a question that sometimes turnovers just come up to luck. Sure, you can make a play, but oftentimes it's a tip ball or something, and just you create a mistake by the opposition. Adoree Jackson was signed last year. He was given a chance. Really, he had a pretty good season with New York. They bring him back after many years in Tennessee. Xavier McKinney, I think he only continues to get better. So defensively, you have Wink Martindale, who's back again as your defensive coordinator. At times, they gave up big plays last year, and that is Wink Martindale. He is run and gun for a defense. He takes big chances. He'll leave corners on an island, and you live with it. But this team found ways to win games. I think they're better suited. Hearing Mina Kimes talk about this defense, the way they're going to be set up, the players they have now to fill positions, they will be better suited for Wink Martindale's defense and to play it effectively. So I like that. Another strength. Their skill position players are better than they were last year. They just are. Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger, tight end duo. I thought Bellinger was awesome last year. He'll never be an elite guy, but he made every play you'd want. He was a guy that in the red zone was effective. He only had 30 receptions, 268 yards, but every reception that he made seemed important to me. He had a horrible eye injury where he got poked in the eye and he missed a number of games. I think he's got more there. If you pair him with Waller, helps your blocking up front. But as I mentioned, Hodgkins, Slayton, Shepard, Campbell, Jalen Hyatt's an X factor. How good can he be in the NFL after a decent college career with Tennessee? He's one to watch. David Sills, do they keep Cole Beasley on the roster after they brought him in and Brian Daboll knows him well from the Buffalo days? But looking at it, it's a better group. Kenny Galladay's not in this team anymore. He couldn't catch a pass. And their skill position players still aren't great. They're still not elite by any means, but they're better than what it was. Joe Shane clearly looks at this and says, we don't want to spend big money on wide receivers. And it's zagging while everybody zigs. Because you look, and the Minnesota Vikings are currently negotiating with Justin Jefferson, who's the best receiver in the NFL. Stephon Diggs got big money from the Bills. Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins. So the Giants are kind of doing what Kansas City did, other than with Travis Kelce. Nobody on the Chiefs wide receivers make a whole lot of money. None of the Chiefs wide receivers are brand name, huge players. You look at and go, okay, that's one of the best receivers in the NFL. The Giants are doing the same thing because I think they trust Brian Daboll and his scheme. They trust the athleticism of Daniel Jones. They trust that Saquon Barkley is a great running back, which he is. And that if they have all those things put together and a great defense, they don't need great players on offense. It's a gamble. We'll see. Weaknesses. I'm not saying this offensive line is going to be bad. But Nick Gates and John Feliciano are gone on the offensive line. And Daniel Jones hardly got sacked last year. So they got a new left guard and a new center. So John Michael Schmitz Jr. is going to be their center, and Ben Breedson. Andrew Thomas at left tackle is phenomenal. They signed him this offseason as well. He's a monster. Mark Lewinsky has been in New York a long time. He stays, and Evan Neal was their first-round draft pick from a few years back. But losing Nick Gates, losing John Feliciano, those are big losses. Having a center that you trust is pivotal. So that's the weakness for me. I think the offensive line could be great because the other parts are very good. But you always hear about the Jets' offensive line, and that's their biggest weakness of the team, and it's going to be their Achilles heel. I think it's the Giants' Achilles heel as well. That and the fact that if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, what happens? Matt Breida is the backup running back. But last year, they needed Saquon Barkley to be present. He needed to play all 17 games, and he did. I look around and go, I don't trust Daniel Jones to be a pocket passer, to be a guy that just slinging the ball down the field. He needs play action. He needs those bootlegs. That's the way he plays football. So if there's a point in the season where Saquon Barkley gets injured, which he has in the past, the Giants could fall apart. It's a risk. It's a risk, and I think it's almost a killer to your team if you don't have that running back. The offensive line would have to be phenomenal to create holes for a guy like Matt Breida because he's a good running back, sure, but he's not Saquon Barkley. And it's not like running backs are just sitting there. Dalvin Cook is signed now. Kareem Hunt, maybe he could be a guy you call off the street to come play for your team. But it's not easy to get a guy that you trust, that knows your scheme, that is just going to... Saquon Barkley's really good in pass protection as well. So looking through all of that, you need everything you need everything on this team to play well. Because I think the quarterback position, I think the skill position players are limited in what they can do. I think you need everything to go right for this team to be successful, and it did last year. And I think this team is better. But do they have potholes? Absolutely. Because I think defenses are going to look around and go, Daniel Jones, we know you can run. We know you can break the pocket and jaunt for 10, 15 yards. But if you don't have that ability, if we don't allow you to break contain, if we just force you to stay in the pocket, can you beat us? And that's, if I'm an opposing defense, that's what I try to do. You sit in the pocket and try to beat us, because I don't think you can. And if you do, we'll take it on the chin. But I think that should be the game plan for most defensive coordinators. Because Daniel Jones had so many games last year where he runs for 100 yards, and they're important third down carries that move the sticks. If he's in the pocket and he's forced to make a play, for instance, last year he had 708 yards rushing, 120 carries, 7 touchdowns. It's incredible. He's an athletic guy. You know that's what he wants to do. By far the most carries of his career. His previous high was 65 in 2020 to 120. The Giants' offense was basically, are we going to let him run? He's going to be on the move and throwing the football. That's the game plan. Bootlegs, play action. And you could do it because you had to fear Saquon Barkley. Because the offensive line was good and Saquon Barkley was chewing up the opposing defense to go, oh shit, we got to prepare for this. We have to load the box. He runs a bootleg play action and he's got all the room if he wants. Receivers are more open. So the Giants are a good team. They're better than they were last year. Daniel Jones is limited, but he's a solid quarterback. I'm not saying he's a good quarterback because I don't think he is. He's solid. Is he a franchise guy? No. Is he worth $40 million? No. But can he be successful in this offense? Yes. But I think he needs everything to go right or this can fall apart quick. Joe Shane's playing a dangerous game as general manager with the way he's built this club. I think the Darren Waller trade was a big one, and I think they also need Darren Waller to have a big year. And maybe Paris Campbell will be better than he was in Indy because it wasn't all that good. Sterling Shepard, we've been saying forever, this guy's got all the talent in the world. He can be fantastic. He was there when Daniel Jones started, when Eli Manning was still there, for Christ's sake. And you're still like, okay. What else you got? How does Jalen Hyatt turn out? So it's interesting. This team was a playoff team last year, and they remain very good. But can things go wrong? Absolutely. But the New York Giants be looking to make the playoffs for the second straight year. Let's travel to the star. How about them Cowboys? Jerry Jones remains the owner. Just had to throw that in there. Kept Mike McCarthy. Kept Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator. Kellen Moore is out, new offensive coordinator for the Chargers. And Mike McCarthy is now the play caller. Mike McCarthy is the man. He's running things, and he said this offseason he wants to run the football more. He wants to be an old school offense. That's the way he wants to do things. All right. Well, the problem with that is Zeke Elliott is gone. Tony Pollard broke his leg, and as I've talked about, I'm sure you all seen, you've heard this before, they didn't address their running back depth this offseason. They didn't trade for Jonathan Taylor yet, anyway. They didn't sign Kareem Hunt. They didn't go get Dalvin Cook. So they want to run the football more. They want to be this physical team, but they don't really have the fuel to do it. But with all that being said, I don't think Mike McCarthy should be calling plays. I don't think Mike McCarthy can hardly handle just being a head coach. He'll forget about the time at one point this season. He'll forget to call a timeout. He'll make a stupid decision that you're just like, what were you thinking, Mike? Because it happens all the time. But Mike McCarthy is a Super Bowl winning head coach way back when with the Green Bay Packers. He has led this team to back-to-back playoff appearances, losing in the divisional round to San Francisco last year. So he's been successful throughout his career. What did the Cowboys do other than that? I like their offseason. First thing, they traded with the Colts and acquired Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore, former Defensive Player of the Year. You pair him, you look at him at corner, and you go, he's great. He's phenomenal, Stephon Gilmore. Again, Defensive Player of the Year. He can do it all. You pair him with Trayvon Diggs, the ball hawk who got a new $100 million contract this offseason. It's a perfect fit because I think Stephon Gilmore will play the opposing team's best wide receiver. Trayvon Diggs will get the next best guy. We'll get the number 2. He likes to take chances. I did think he improved last year because normally he would just go for interceptions, not care about the rest. But he only had 3 interceptions last year after 11 the year before, but I thought he played better in 2022 despite that number. So I love that pairing. They had Brandon Cooks on offense. Mr. 1,000 yards. Seems to have it wherever he goes. He's played in New England. He's played in New Orleans. Played for Houston. Now he's in Dallas. Pairing him with Dak Prescott, a good wide receiver. They re-signed Cooper Rush. Signed pass rusher Takk McKinley. And they did bring in Brian Schottenheimer as the new offensive coordinator, but Mike McCarthy's calling plays, so it really doesn't matter. Strengths for this team. There's a lot of them. Oh, and they also added Trey Lance. That was just a few days ago. So Trey Lance is now their number 3 quarterback. You look at it. Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. Pretty good 1, 2, 3. Michael Gallup was banged up last year, and you might look at him and go, well, Michael Gallup's not a number 2 receiver. He's better off playing in the slot. He's better off just being used in different situations. Okay. Now, Brandon Cooks is an outside receiver. CeeDee Lamb is an outside receiver as well. CeeDee Lamb is still, I think he's still got more there. And he's been very good to start his NFL career, don't get me wrong. 1,300 yards receiving last year after 11 hits. So he keeps getting better. 9 touchdowns, 12.7 yards per catch. He's their guy. But if it's CeeDee Lamb, nobody else, now you have Brandon Cooks, you have Michael Gallup, you can't double them. It makes things more difficult on the opposing team's defense. They also have Kevontae Turbin, who they'll use in special teams. So I think they'll use in gadget plays. I want the offense to use him more. They likely won't because it's Mike McCarthy, but I can hope. Tight end, they lose Dalton Schultz to Houston, and he was a very good tight end for this team. But this team's moving in a different direction. Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, Peyton Hendershot. How about Jake Ferguson? Look at him. Where'd he play? Wisconsin. Luke Schoonmaker, where'd he play? Oh yeah, Michigan. And Peyton Hendershot played at The Ohio State. That's not just a trivia, so I can tell you all where they played because I know it because that's my life. But they're not guys you look at and go, well, this guy's a great receiver. This guy was a great tight end. He caught so many passes in college. They're building a tight end group where they can put any 3 of these guys on the field at any given moment to block and catch the occasional pass. Schultz was not a blocker. Schultz could not help in the running game. He did not help in pass protection. He was a liability on that front. So was Jeff Swaim, everybody before. That was not the strength of the team. These 3 guys, maybe they'll catch 40 passes between the 3 of them this season. But I think they'll be used in the red zone. I think they'll be used in pass protection, and that's the way they're going to help the team. I think their weapons are a strength, and I like the way that they're using their tight end group because with the way this offense is going to run, and if you're going to run the football and use passing off of that, get some good pass protection, get some guys in there that can do the job. These 3 guys, I think they're all going to get playing time, and I don't think anyone you'll look at them and go, well, that guy's greater than this one. They're all the same, if you ask me. A strength, the team's running back, the same offensive line. Tyron Smith, left tackle, healthy. Tyler Smith, left guard, healthy. Tyler Biadasz, center, healthy. Zach Martin, contract restructured, camp, healthy. And Terrence Steele. When playing together, one of the best offensive lines in football. I can't say the best because I got to talk about the Eagles, and I don't want to go through that again. The Eagles are too good. But this offensive line is fantastic. They know how to play with one another. They're physical. They don't give up a lot of sacks. They create good running lanes. They know what they're doing. They've been there, done that. They know the expectation. They need to keep Dak Prescott upright, keep him healthy to give this team the best chance to compete this year and get back to a Super Bowl for the first time since 1995. Another strength, their front, their defense, really their defense. DeMarcus Lawrence returning. They brought in Jonathan Hankins. Neville Gallimore returning. Dorrance Armstrong returning. Micah Parsons, ever heard of him? Returning. Malik Jefferson returning. They drafted Mozzie Smith out of Michigan, who might have been the best run stopper in all of college football last year. They are good and they are deep. DeMarcus Lawrence, maybe you you'll rush first down, check out, then come back in on third. Sam Williams can check in. Hankins, then Mozzie Smith. Ozzie Aduswa with Neville Gallimore. Micah Parsons, Dorm Strong will get reps. Leighton Vander Esch returns. Jabril Cox coming back. Stephon Gilmore. Jordan Lewis in the secondary. Malik Hooker as experienced. Trayvon Diggs. Deron Bland. He got a lot of time last year playing secondary corner. He won't be getting that much this year, but if something happens, if injury strikes, he knows how to play corner. This defense, fantastic. It's been a top 10 defense every year that Dan Quinn has. 2 years Dan Quinn's defensive coordinator, it's been a top 10 defense. The big thing that this team needs to do better is stop the run. It was their weakness last year, and they drafted Mozzie Smith. They would give up big running plays, and that would keep teams in the game. So they look at it, say, that's our weakness on defense. We need to address it. They go draft Mozzie Smith. So you talk about all of that. A great corner tandem. So much depth rushing the passer. One of the best offensive lines. Better receiving core. What's the weakness? I just said it, but I hate what they did with the running back position, but I won't go more into that. Their linebackers are a tad underwhelming, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal, so I'm not going to too much on that. And Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is not necessarily a weakness, but is he a strength? Dak Prescott played 12 games last year, and he led the NFL in interceptions. Dak Prescott is Jekyll and Hyde. 1 week, he'll be crap. The next week, he'll play the Minnesota Vikings, and they'll beat them 49-3, which they did last year. It's just, what are you going to get week to week? What kind of Dak Prescott are you going to get on the field when it comes to, you have room to run for a first down, but you force a throw? Why? Well, I know why. It's because he injured his ankle a number of years ago, and I think he's still a little timid in doing that. But are you going to be willing to run to get that yardage? Because other quarterbacks will. I understand the injury. I understand the hesitation. But sometimes you just need to do it. I like Dak Prescott. I think he's a good quarterback. I got my quarterback list coming out later, next little bit. And looking at it, where do I have Dak? He's right where he should be. He's in the middle. That's Dak. He's the middle of the pack quarterback. Because you can't trust him week to week to be that guy. But this team around him is pretty damn good. And the thing that the Cowboys do better than almost any defense is they create turnovers. They led the NFL in turnovers last year. They create short fields, and they make life easier on Dak Prescott than he even realizes. So he's just a question mark for me. How will he play? Because he missed a few games beginning of the year last year, but they went 4-1 without him. Cooper Rush came in, played good football. But how will he play? What kind of quarterback are they going to get? Because the Dallas Cowboys absolutely can win the Super Bowl this year. They can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, and they can win it. No doubt about it. On this roster, no doubt about it. They're loaded with talent. They have everything you'd want. They got a good defensive coordinator. I don't love Mike McCarthy, but all that being said, you can overcome it because of your talent and the way that you're built. And I think this team, led by Micah Parsons, really is sick and tired of losing. Of getting to the playoffs and losing, just looking around, seeing a team like the Eagles in their own division get to the Super Bowl and be like, oh, I wish we were them. I think they have that fire in them to get over the hump. But the old adage about the Cowboys, what can go wrong will go wrong. And it's hard to trust them. To me, they're a lock playoff team. I won't go as far as saying that they're a lock playoff team. They're too damn good not to be. But it's a big year. Trey Lance gets acquired. They don't tell Dak. He didn't seem all that happy about it. They didn't tell Mike McCarthy. Head coach and quarterback don't get a heads up that a new quarterback is coming and joining the team. Interesting. Might be a pertinent thing to tell people in the organization. But Jerry Jones talks about all the time, I want to win another Super Bowl before I die. He's 80 years old. It's only so many years. Hopefully he lives a long time. There's only so many years left before you never know. Things can happen, right? And you got a good team now. You're in an NFC that isn't exactly loaded. We've gone through every division but the West, and the West isn't all that good either. So you look at it and go, well, we should be able to compete in the NFC. Our biggest competition are the Eagles. Let's go win this division. Who knows? We could get a bye in the first round of the postseason, which they probably will. But I think Mike McCarthy knows he's on the hot seat. He's calling the plays now. If things don't go well, I don't think he'll be the head coach next year. Even if they get to the playoffs, there needs to be progression with this team. Losing in back-to-back divisional rounds, not good enough. You beat old man Tom Brady and that Tampa team that was horrible last year on the road. Okay, great. That was a given. That team was spent. That team was no good. And you'll see it this year on the field with Baker Mayfield. You go play San Francisco. Not an easy place to play, but Brock Purdy first go around in the playoffs, and you can't beat San Fran. What else is new? You get to your biggest moment. They haven't been to an NFC Championship game since the last time they won a Super Bowl. The drought is that long. But to quote Carrie Underwood, they're knocking on heaven's door. They're right there. They're itching closer. America's team, the star, Jerry Jones. Predictions will come next week. The team's very good. The team's very, very good. But how will Dak play? I think Dak is going to play better. I think this team's going to be really good. That's my end of this. I think he's going to play better. I think he's going to look more like the guy that we're accustomed to and not the turnover machine, mistake-prone quarterback that he demonstrated last year. At least the Cowboys are praying that's the Dak that we see on the field, because otherwise could get ugly very quickly down there in Dallas. But they open up their season against the Giants. They open up the season against the Giants on Sunday Night Football. In week 2, they host the Jets. Week 3, they go to Arizona. There's that cupcake game. And then they get the Patriots. So the first 4 weeks, not a loaded schedule. It's not easy. Divisional opponent. Then you get Aaron Rodgers and the Pats and the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to get tough games. They got to play the Dolphins. They play the Dolphins on Christmas Eve. They get, obviously, the Patriots, the Jets. They'll have to play the Bills this year. They got to play the NFC West, which honestly is kind of a luxury this season with Arizona and the Rams and some of the teams down there. But the Cowboys are always a story. They're always taking up oxygen because they are constantly in the limelight for one reason or another. But they should be in the limelight this year because this team is damn good, and this team should be one of the prohibitive Super Bowl favorites, which they are on betting apps because it's betting. But I'm saying this is the Noah Warren world of reality, the truth, and not the Paul Pierce truth, the real truth. This team's good. This team's really good. Yet, all that being said, in their own division, in the city of Philadelphia, located at Lincoln Financial Field, there's this team called the Eagles who got to a Super Bowl last year with a quarterback named Jalen Hurts, who was a second rounder, who many didn't believe in, not me. But not many people believed in Jalen Hurts. But they gave him $230 million in total money this offseason. He's their quarterback of the future. They saw enough. And Jalen Hurts, after balling out in the Super Bowl, playing fantastic, just only being bested by the best quarterback in the game, maybe all time, Patrick Mahomes, they're running it back, in a sense. They're looking to get back to the Super Bowl and win it this time. Now, when you get to a Super Bowl and you have a great team, you're going to lose players. They lost their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen. He's now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He had a lot of success with multiple quarterbacks. Brian Johnson was the quarterback's coach. He's the new OC. So we'll see what he can do. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Detroit Lion. We talked about this. Was phenomenal in his role last year. Marcus Epps, safety. See ya. Miles Sanders joins the Carolina Panthers. They lose Javon Hargrave, maybe the biggest loss of the offseason, to San Francisco, which hurts because their defense was already really good. And now you get the best run defender on the Eagles. And Isaac Suamalu was the one member of the offensive line that departed the Eagles this offseason. So you lose a lot of important pieces because that's what happens when you win. Any sport, you get to the top of the mountain, you lose players. It's weird that you think you're the best and you get penalized for it, but that's the way sports works. So what did the Eagles do? Well, they had draft picks because teams were stupid and were trading away players, and they go, okay, we'll give you this player, we'll give you a quarterback here, take this, and they had picks. 10th pick overall, the Eagles had after getting to the Super Bowl. Crazy, right? They take Jalen Carter, who for most of the year was looked at as the number one player in the draft. He ran into some trouble, had a little bit of a weight problem, he was involved in an incident off the field, but the Eagles said, we think we can work him out, we think we can fix him, quote unquote, and we're going to take him at 10. If he works out, if he can find himself, we haven't heard anything bad about him this offseason, he's the steal of the draft because you get the guy who was supposed to go number one at 10. 10 to the Eagles. If he's great, God help the NFL. They also get Nolan Smith, who also played at Georgia with Jalen Carter. Oh yeah, they won the national championship the last 2 years, pardon me, if you forgot. They get him at 30. He was great in college too, another really good defensive player. They bring in DeAndre Swift from the Lions. They bring in Rashad Penny from the Seattle Seahawks. They re-signed Brandon Graham. They signed Terrell Edmonds from the Steelers. Zacchaeus and Marcus Mariota comes over as their new backup quarterback as Gardner Minshew departed for Indianapolis in the offseason. So that's a lot. That's a lot with the Eagles. But I think they had the best draft of any team. And again, they made it to the Super Bowl and had the best draft. So it's staggering to hear that. think it's San Francisco and the way they do it. When we talked about them with their draft picks and the quarterback yesterday, and they're still good. How the Eagles do it with getting this far and spending money, and yet they still get really good draft picks. They still find a way to have really good talent in this team is beyond me. But how's this team looking? Well, they let Miles Sanders leave, who was number one running back, as I just said. I'm going to start with strength, and I'm going to go down for this team because it's big. So they say, okay, we'll let Miles Sanders sign for $7 million. Miles Sanders got $7 million. They're paying $7 million to their entire running back core of Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Penny, and DeAndre Swift. I'd rather have 4 for $7 million than 1 for $7 million because Miles Sanders is not, I don't know if he's better than DeAndre Swift, quite frankly. Rashad Penny, when healthy, is a battering ram of a running back. Kenneth Gainwell was a red zone machine. And Boston Scott's kind of a mix kind of a guy. Get him in on third down. He can catch passes out of the backfield. They just have a jack of all trades at running back. Love it. Wide receivers. A.J. Brown. Did he pair well with Jalen Hurts last year? I wonder if he did. I mean, it was a kind of a trade. You look at, they traded for him draft night. They signed him draft night. How about 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns? Not bad. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. He changed their offense entirely. They also had Devontae Smith, Matt Wright's and mine guy from Alabama. 95 receptions last year, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He'll have better numbers this year. There's an early prediction for you. Quez Watkins returns. They drafted Jadon Hazelwood from Oklahoma. They brought in Zacchaeus, brought him over from the Atlanta Falcons. Their wide receiving core, pretty damn good. Oh, yeah, they still have Dallas Goedert. Remember him? Pretty good. Tight end. Can do it all. Jack Stoll, good backup. So, weapons remain the same. Quarterback remains the same. Dual threat, Jalen Hurts. Throw the ball down the field. Let's go to their next strength. How about their offensive line? They lose Suamalo. Other than Suamalo, their offensive line remains the same. Mailata, yep, played last year. Fantastic. Landon Dickerson, left guard, returning. Jason Kelsey, best center in football, returning. Cam Jurgens is the one new addition to this offensive line. Through all accounts at camp, he's been fantastic. And the best right tackle in football, Lane Johnson, has not allowed a sack in 2.5 years. 2.5 years for Lane Johnson, no sacks. They also have Tyler Steen, who they drafted from Alabama as backup, and Jack Driscoll, another guy that they played sparingly last year but can play. So yes, you lose Suamalo, but Jurgens should be fine. He will plug and play. He'll be just as good in this offensive line. So you have the best offensive line in football. You have some great weapons. Jalen Hurts is one of the best quarterbacks in football, right up there with the best of them. Sounds pretty good. Defensively, they keep their corner duo. Going into the offseason, you go and say, well, we can't keep Bradbury and Darius Slay. Oh, yeah, we can. Slay returned after he was going to leave. Bradbury returned when he might leave. They're both there. They had Jalen Carter, and they also had Jordan Davis, who played his first year. Oh, yeah, where did Jordan Davis play? Oh, yeah, Georgia. They just have Georgia's defense on the Philadelphia Eagles. You keep Brandon Graham, 1-year deal, veteran, still can play. Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett, Janarius Robinson, Hassan Reddick, who was a wrecking ball last year. Hassan Reddick, that's Nakobe Dean. I think he had 17.5 sacks, but I want to make sure I'm right because I like to bring you the correct information when I do this. Hassan Reddick last year, I took one away. He had 16 sacks. Pretty good, though. Not bad. Played all 17 games, Hassan Reddick. Career year with the Eagles, but he had 11 in 2021, 12.5 in 2020. He's just getting better. They still have Nakobe Dean at middle linebacker. He's healthy to start the year. Guess where he played, by the way? Oh yeah, Georgia. Nick Morrow, they brought him a will linebacker. Zach Cunningham as depth. Nolan Smith, as I mentioned, Georgia. Sense of pattern. Avonte Maddox, Kaleo Rengo. Rengo did not play at Georgia, so that's big news. I know so far in this breakdown. He didn't play at Georgia. It's kind of. Oh wait, no, he did play at Georgia. Ringo, he did. Oh, it's so fun. But I love their team. The one thing I can say, Terrell Edmonds. They brought him over from the Steelers. He's not as good as C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's not as physical. He's not as mean. That's what I would say. So that's a miss. Free safety, Reed Blankenship for Marcus Epps. I think Blankenship, when he played last year, he's really good. They also drafted Sidney Brown, a Canadian. He was a great college player as well. I think he'll be looking to make an impact, getting into his first. He played at Illinois for 5 years. He's a good player. 6 interceptions last year. He can ball. Again, a Canadian on the Eagles. Fun stuff. Jake Elliott returns as their kicker. He's one of the best in football. So, through all of that, their team is so deep. They have options. New offensive coordinator, that can be a worry. You keep your DC. You keep your head coach, Nick Sirianni, of course. Jalen Hurts. What can go wrong? Here's what I can come up with. Super Bowl hangover. It's really hard to get to the Super Bowl back-to-back years. Just is. It's a grind. You got to go through the season again. You have to hope for health, which often you don't get multiple years in a row. But you see the Chiefs, they go to 5 straight AFC championship games. That's extremely difficult. Extremely difficult, and they've had to battle to do it. Do the Eagles have that? I think they do. I think this team is going to be motivated because I think it's Jason Kelce's last year. It might be Lane Johnson's last year. These guys are still playing at a high level, but Lane Johnson's 33. Jason Kelce is 35. Jason Kelce nearly retired, but he said, I'm going to come back as I look at this team and how good it is. We can get back to the Super Bowl. So injuries is one thing I look at and I say, can you get lucky enough with injuries? Is there a Super Bowl hangover? And you can't measure Super Bowl hangover, but can it happen with this group? New offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson. We know how Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts work together. Peanut butter, jelly, just simpatico, right? How does the connection work between these two? Do they have a connection? Can they find a groove? Will they have success as OC and quarterback? I don't think you change up all that much. I think you leave Jalen Hurts. You give him options as your quarterback to run if he wants to pass. He had 3,700 yards passing last year, 22 touchdowns, 6 picks. He had 760 yards rushing with 13 rushing touchdowns. He just had a phenomenal season. So you need health. You need health for Jalen Hurts. Obviously, you need health for the entire team. But I'm not saying this team's going to fail because I don't know who's going to get hurt. It's a physical sport. Things can happen. But Jalen Hurts doesn't miss games. Didn't miss games in college. Hasn't missed games in the NFL. So I'm banking on him staying healthy. So new offensive coordinator. I don't really think it's a problem, but I threw it on there. And the last thing, this is really Jalen Hurts regression. He had a great year. Can he continue to play this well? I think he can. But does he drop off a bit? Is he as productive? Does he throw more interceptions? That's all I can think about right now is, will that happen? I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Here's a little spoiler. On my quarterbacks list, He's in the top 5. He's so versatile. He's the epitome of the modern day quarterback. He can run, he can pass. He's the perfect fourth down guy where they just shove him in the ass and they push him through. And they didn't outlaw that play because stop it, defense. I don't give a crap. So it's this team in the NFC where you look around and go, Dallas is a big threat, and Giants were a playoff team, but Minnesota, are they going to be as good? Can they get 13 wins again? Unlikely. Green Bay lost Aaron Rodgers. The Bears are the Bears. Okay, the Lions are getting a lot of hype, but are we buying it? The NFC South, yeah, right. Other than the Saints, maybe. NFC West, of course, the San Francisco, sure. They're a threat, but you beat them last year, so why can't we beat them again? They stole Javon Hargrave from us, but we still think we're better than them. We have a better offensive line. We have a better quarterback. We can go beat that team. It's because you look around, San Francisco always gets the NFC Championship game, but can't get over the hump. So I think if you're the Eagles, you come into this season confident but not cocky. Because if you get cocky, that's when you get knocked down. That's when you get smacked in the face. But the path getting back to the Super Bowl is difficult. Certainly. Jalen Hurts didn't win the MVP, but he certainly could have. Last year, Patrick Mahomes did. Came in second. Cam Newton, when he won the MVP, the Panthers didn't make the playoffs the next year. But I think Jalen Hurts is a different kind of quarterback than Cam Newton. But that's just an example that comes to mind. You look at Carolina and go, this team's pretty good again. Maybe they can get back. They never did. And Cam Newton was never the same quarterback. Recent examples in the NFC, San Francisco is different just because their quarterback's different every year. The way they run their offense is different. But to me, Jalen Hurts is legit. There's too many quarterbacks you can look around the league and go, are you that good? Are you really that guy? Should you be a starting quarterback? He's not a guy I throw in that mix. To me, you're overthinking it if you go look at him and go, yeah, I don't know about him. I worry about him. You get past about the 15 mark in the NFL, you go, okay. They're all about the same. And all these guys play on teams that aren't that good. And do you trust this guy to get you over the hump? Not really. To me, he's in the top 5. He's there with the best of them. I have him above Justin Herbert. There's a little preview for the quarterback show coming up. I think he's as good or better than Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert gets more acclaim. Justin Herbert is looked upon more fondly. But he hasn't won a playoff game yet. Jalen Hurts got to a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts almost won an MVP. Justin Herbert's never been mentioned in that conversation. So I don't have a whole lot of question marks about this team other than ones you can just build through, okay, well, Super Bowl hangover. And that you can't quantify a Super Bowl hangover. It's just, it's a thought. It's something people have said since the dawn of time. Oh, the Eagles, they're going to have a Super Bowl hangover this year. Are they? I don't buy it. The Eagles open their season at the New England Patriots. And oddly enough, it's a weird... Tom Brady's being honored week 1. Oof, good luck, Mac Jones, that afternoon. Then they play Minnesota on a Thursday night. Then they go to the Bucks for Monday Night Football. And in week 4, the Eagles, where are the Eagles here? They got the Commanders. It's a good schedule to start the year. You want to talk about Super Bowl hangover? Just ease into the season. At the Patriots, get a Commanders game. The Vikings on a Thursday night at home in your home opener. That place is going to be loud, and they crushed the Vikings there last year on Monday Night Football week 2. Another week 2 battle between the two teams at Lincoln Financial. So you can ease into the season. There's going to be a lot of expectations on the Eagles. I just put a whole lot on them because I think their team's sublime. I think it's fantastic. But the NFC East, I think it's the best division in football. AFC East is very good, but I think NFC East is better. As I go through, we still got 2 more divisions to go with the AFC West, which is good too. AFC North is good. NFC North, not really. But I would say NFC East or the AFC East for the best divisions in football. Just with teams that can compete for a playoff spot, that can be a threat. But I think if you look at it, if you had a gun to somebody's head and you go, can the Dolphins win the Super Bowl? I think 9 out of 10 people say no. People might say the Bills can. If you go in the AFC West, gun to people's head, you say, can the Chiefs win? Obviously. But do 9 out of 10 people think that the Chargers can? Probably not. Can the Broncos win the Super Bowl? Probably not. I think you go gun to people's head in the NFC East, and you go Eagles. Can they win the Super Bowl? Yes. Gun to your head. Can the Cowboys win? Yes. And the only reason Cowboys it would be a no is because it's what can go wrong will go wrong. It's the Dallas Cowboys. They never win. That's true. They do never win, but it's a new year, and they're a better team than they were last year. And I credit both organizations because they improved their teams a lot after having really good teams the year before, which is hard to do. It's easy to be worse after having a really good season. But they did it. So that's the NFC East preview. Tomorrow we're going to have a regular show. We're going to talk about a number of different things. We're going to talk about the U.S. Open, which kicked off yesterday. Talk about some NFL cuts and some decisions with the Arizona Cardinals as they're already trying to tank, which is an interesting tactic. John Herdman leaving for TFC. Canada basketball having a moment. A big UFC fight announced this morning. Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays won a game last night, so bake them a cake. Jose Altuve hit for the cycle. That was pretty cool. If you're into that kind of thing. You might hate Jose Altuve, though, so if you do, then not quite as cool, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy that. I thought it was they crushed the Boston Red Sox. But currently Leila Andy Fernandez is down a set in her first round match. She's up a break in the second. I was watching that before we came on live here. But she's fun to watch. I'll give her that. But we'll talk about Canada tennis tomorrow, which just is in a pathetic place right now. And yeah, it just gets worse and worse with every major. But we move on. Djokovic is now the new world number 1, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Lots to talk about tomorrow on the program. Thursday, college football preview show. Matt Wright returns. Can't wait. Utah, Florida, Thursday night, Nebraska, Minnesota. It's all fantastic. So until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'm Noah Warren, and this is To The Point.